the white flag lap. Danny Sullivan, he's led all the way. Now we watch Danny Sullivan as he takes the Penske colors around for the very last time. The checkered flag for Danny Sullivan. And Sullivan from green to checkered leads it all.
This weekend, two-time Laguna Seca winner Danny Sullivan stepped back behind the wheel of a champ car to sample the performance and take us on a high-speed tour of one of his favorite racetracks.
I love Laguna Seca. It is so great to be behind the wheel again. Tricky little section right here. Little right-hander, can't get on it too early. Right out to the edge of the track. Now this one's almost flat out here. About 118 miles an hour through there, right out to the edge of the track. Up into fifth, sixth gear. About 160 right there. Hard on the brake. Onto the old circuit now. Look at this shot. Going up here, I can't see anything where I'm going. Over the little brow, down through the dip. Now I'm climbing up the hill. Let's not forget, when we come to the top up here, this is where Alex Zanardi passed Brian Herta. Went down the inside on my left there, straight across, almost into that bush, down through the dirt, down out of the corkscrew, and passed Brian Herta and went on to win 2 years ago here. Oh, I love Laguna Seca. This place is fabulous. What a kick.
What a kick indeed. Laguna Seca Raceway, site of round 16 of the Kart FedEx Championship for 1998. Welcome to the Monterey Peninsula, to Laguna Seca, and to the Honda Grand Prix of Monterey featuring the Texaco Havoline 300. On a warm and breezy day at Monterey, welcome everyone. I'm Bob Varsha, along with two-time Laguna Seca winner Danny Sullivan. The first rule of broadcasting is you need to be enthusiastic. Danny, here, that is no problem. Tell me why you have such a smile on your face here.
Well, Laguna Seca is fabulous. It's a very demanding track. There's a lot of slow corners, 40 miles an hour, high speed, 180 miles an hour, very quick corners. Then the ups and downs, and our beloved corkscrew. What a great shot that is, just dropping off that and descending 160 feet down back to the hairpin that comes on pit straightaway. You toss all that together, throw in the ambiance of the Monterey Peninsula and the great fans up here, and that's why we all love Laguna Seca. It's a great place.
The PPG Cup has been clinched, but we have a great race in store. The cars and drivers are on track right now. Let's take a look at the way they'll line up. On the pole, hoping for his first career win from his third pole here, Brian Herta. Of course, his memories of Laguna Seca are from 1996, when Alex Zanardi came flying up the inside in the corkscrew, off the track and went on to take the race from Brian Herta. Herta will be starting next to Dario Franchitti, looking for his third straight win. On row 2 will be Jimmy Vasser, a winner here last year, and Greg Moore from Canada. On row 3, Alex Zanardi, already crowned the champion, starting next to Adrian Fernandez. On row 4 will be Al Unser Jr. and Scott Pruitt. Back on row 5, Mauricio Gugelmin and fellow Brazilian Gil de Ferran, whose first career win came here at Laguna. On row 6, J.J. Leto and Michael Andretti, a two-time winner. On row 7, Christian Fittipaldi and rookie leader Tony Kanaan. On row 8, Mark Blundell and Max Pappas. Back on row 9 will be Richie Hearn and Paul Tracy, another two-time winner at Laguna. On row number 10, Bobby Rahal, who won 4 in a row here back in the 80s, and Patrick Carpentier, Elio Castroneves, and Andre Ribeiro on row 11. On row 12, Alex Barron and Robbie Gordon. On row 13, Michel Jourdain Jr. and Art Meyer in the yellow Lola. And on row 14, making his debut in the series, Vincenzo Saspiri in for P.J. Jones with Dan Gurney's team and Dennis Vitolo. Now, we're proud to say that Honda has bought up our commercial time late in the race, not to show you commercials, but to show you racing. And we plan to bring you plenty of green flag racing before the checkered flag. A big thank you to Honda. Now to Gary Gerald.
And Bob, as we get set to go green, a great opportunity here for Brian Herta as once again he chases that elusive first career victory. For the third time this season, the sixth time in his career, he is the man that controls the field. He will pace this race, and he wants to break through and get that first triumph out of the way. He says that he's fighting to keep his self-confidence very, very strong, and in his words, he says, I want to kill that frustration of not yet getting the first win. History may well be on Brian's side today. Keep in mind, 9 times in the past, the man who starts this race from the pole has won at Laguna Seca. Go get him, Brian. Jan?
Well, starting outside Brian Herta, as the cars go through, they have one more parade lap that they're going to do before they'll turn it loose down here. This is turn number 11, where right now they're only going about 35 miles an hour. But you know what? If you squeeze the trigger here, you're doing 170 miles an hour by the time you pop over the top of the hill. That is going to be so exciting to stand here. It'll be a total of 25,000 horsepower that'll be unleashed here in a moment for the green flag. Let's get back to Franchitti. Remember, he's won the last 2 races. If you win the last 2 races, never underestimate what that does for a driver's confidence. He's going to be tough.
All right, thanks very much, Jan. A great racetrack and a great race in store. The PPG Cup safety car is out there on the racetrack. There is Brian Herta, and there's the man of the moment, Dario Franchitti, who has won on 2 tracks are about as different as you can imagine. The wide open spaces of the permanent road circuit in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, Road America, and the tight confines of the street circuit in Vancouver, Canada. Here's our race analysis, about 2 1/4 miles around Laguna Seca with plenty of up and down. We are set for 83 laps of racing. Brian Herta is the pole sitter. He did not better the lap record that he set 1 year ago. But he will start from pole. In 4 visits to this racetrack, Brian Herta has never started anywhere but the front row, and 3 times he has been the quick qualifier. But with Dario Franchitti alongside and Alex Zanardi, that is, the new PPG Cup champion just behind him, could be a very interesting turn 2, the Andretti hairpin. Danny Sullivan?
I think this is going to be a great start here. There's a lot at stake. Of course, Zanardi's already clinched the championship, so he's not very concerned about what really goes on there. He's going to make his moves. These other guys are battling, some for just the win and some for the championship, or I should say second place in the championship.
Through the rainy corner, named for the former 3-time world motorcycle champion who lives in this area. The field is now pairing up. Let's go down to Jan Beekes to get his view of the start.
Well, Bob, it's nice and quiet here now, but believe me, it's not going to be quiet in a moment. I glance over my shoulder, and of course, what you want to do is you want to go slow at first, let the pace car get away. We're going to look for Herta and Franchitti to get ready to step on it. They're out of here.
And Zanardi is right up on Herta's gearbox as they flash under the Honda walkover bridge and take the green flag from Jim Swinto. We're underway. Herta leading down into the Andretti hairpin.
Of course, it's very tricky in the back of the field because as everybody slows up, you got to maneuver around other cars. We have a couple of cars off in the grass. That looks like Michael Andretti there. He's got it going again. Those tires will be junk for about a lap or so, and he's at the back of the field. Slow car in front of him. Look at that. That was a damaged wheel. It looked like it was J.J. Leto, who's been quick all weekend long.
J.J. Leto, the Finnish rookie, was 3rd quickest in the morning warm-up, and the Hogan team was looking for great things today. The order is Herta, Franchitti, Vasser, and there is Leto with that deranged right front corner.
That's way more camber than you want to run around this place. He's going to have to stop. I would imagine his day's probably done there.
What a shame for Leto, who was looking for so much here at this racetrack. Brian Herta, meanwhile, beginning to open up that early lead over Alex Zanardi in the red car, the Target Chip Ganassi Racing Reynard, then Franchitti, who dropped back to 3rd down in turn 2. Let's take another look at what happened to Michael Andretti.
Okay, Michael's on the outside here. You see him just going around the outside. He gets tapped from the rear. J.J. Leto, that's why he held his hand up. You saw him hold his hands up like going, hey, what are you guys doing back there?
And Michael Andretti now visits the pit lane. Let me correct me, running 2nd is Jimmy Vasser in the number 12 car for Ganassi Racing. It is Herta, Vasser, Franchitti, Moore, Zanardi, Fernandez, Unser Jr., Pruitt, DeFerrin, and Gugelman.
Well, let's not forget that Jimmy Vasser's defending champion here. He's done very well here before. And remember what Chip Ganassi said earlier in the broadcast? He said, hey, we want Jimmy to finish 2nd in that championship. We're putting all the effort behind him because Alex has clinched the championship.
There's Dario Franchitti, the car nosing around as he hits the heavy braking area for the corkscrew. Now, throughout the day here at Laguna Seca, we're going to be cutting away live to Wrigley Field as Sammy Sosa comes to the plate, trying to break the tie that he is currently in with Babe Ruth with 60 home runs. He'll try to catch Maris, and who knows, maybe go after Mark McGuire. You won't miss any of the race action here at Laguna Seca, however. We hope you appreciate our coverage of sports wherever it is happening on this Sunday afternoon.
And as you see there, Brian Herta's got a little bit of a lead over Jimmy Vasser. What everybody's trying to do here is also monitor their fuel. They've got to be careful and try to get in that window. They want to race as hard as they can, but they still have to be conservative with their fuel.
And guys, Michael Andretti got in for quick service. They did take on 4 new tires, topped the fuel, and got him out of here very quickly. No other apparent damage for Andretti, but deep at the back of the pack.
Now, Alex Zanardi, every time he has a situation like that, a yellow seems to launch him back up through the field. Let's see if that, if it helps Michael here. Coming up to the top through the corkscrew. Look at this. You got no idea where you're going. Drop over that, down the hill.
Let's go to Jan Bikas in the pits.
J.J. Leto has also brought his car on, as well as Michael Andretti, who has left. And there is significant damage to the right front corner for J.J. Leto. He is going to be here for a while.
See the team hard at work on the car. Other pit members who cannot go over the wall, watching from behind it. Going to work on the car. Incidentally, Sammy Sosa came up for the first time today before we came on the air, and he flew out. No homers yet for Sammy, but we'll let you know. Welcome back to Laguna Seca. So Sammy Sosa draws an intentional walk after a fly out his first time up against the Brewers and Brad Woodall. Here, Brian Herta continues to lead. You haven't missed anything. Jimmy Vasser runs second, Dario Franchitti third, followed by Greg Moore, Alex Zanardi, and Adrian Fernandez. And many of those men I just named are still in the hunt for important positions in the championship. Across the bottom of your screen, you see the running order and the gap in time to race leader Brian Herta, looking at Adrian Fernandez, with Al Unser Jr. just behind him.
Everybody out there is trying as hard as they can, but what everybody is also trying to do is think of the length of this race to 185 miles. We've got to conserve fuel, and we've got to conserve our tires and be racy at the end. We do not want to see what's happened in some of the earlier races where you throw it away early on. Points are too critical at this stage for 2nd through 10th.
Now at the first hairpin, Michael Andretti and J.J. Leto came together. Andretti pitted, went back out. He is a lap down in 27th place. Leto is done. He's with Jan Bikas.
And J.J., what happened down there between you and Michael?
Well, it didn't happen between us, you know. It happened with Christian. He got a brain failure, you know, and just run into everybody, you know, and was out of control. Went over the curves and hit me towards Michael, you know, so Michael just hit me on the right front, and, you know, that was it, you know. We bent the suspension, and Christian basically spoiled Michael's race as well.
Now, was that a case of Christian trying to force the issue, or were you trying to pick up a position?
No, we were not. I mean, we were just clean with Michael side by side going into the first corner, you know, like everybody else, you know, just clean thing, you know, and, well, you know, you can't win the race in the first corner. You know, he just rushed in, you know, and lost the control and went over the curves and hit me, you know, and then I just hit Michael.
All right, tough end of the day. Thanks.
That was J.J. Leto. Christian Fittipaldi, who started 13th, now runs in 11th. Among the other drivers on the move, Paul Tracy has gone from 18th to 14th. And Robbie Gordon, who started 24th, is now 16th on the racetrack.
And, you know, it's so unfortunate for J.J. Here's a very, very talented, experienced guy, very quick. He hasn't been able to show stuff. The Hogan team has been trying to do a good job for him. They've struggled with some engine failures that they've had and some unreliability. Good little team there. It's just unfortunate they all haven't come together with the results that they both deserve.
And it's one of the oldest truisms in sports. You can't win the race at the first corner, but around a place like this where it's difficult to pass, you can do yourself a lot of good.
Well, the part that they don't add to it, you can't win it in the first corner, but you can certainly throw it away and lose it big time in the first corner. But everybody tries to take advantage of that first corner because maybe there's a chance to slip inside somebody. And it's so fragile, everybody's trying to protect their spot. Every driver's trying to make up a spot or two. These fields are so close, you have to take every opportunity that comes your way.
Looking at Greg Moore in the blue and white player's car, he had a crash in the morning warm-up. Hit the concrete wall at turn 3 pretty hard.
And I was also down with the Simpson guys down there, and George showed me the new helmet. You can't believe what they've done. They've taken out another 8 grams or so Greg drove with the helmet the first time this morning. It is so light, the new Simpson helmet, and he really liked it. That's a big factor for a driver when you're pulling all the G's around a course like this, to have less weight up there on the top of your head.
Comes Franchitti, then Moore, then this man, Alex Zanardi, who on Monday of this week arrived to find that his first son, Nicolo, had been delivered by wife Daniela. Proud Papa says mom and baby are doing fine. Welcome back to Laguna Seca Raceway and the Honda Grand Prix of Monterey, featuring the Texaco Haviland 300. Bob Varsha, Danny Sullivan, Gary Gerald, and Jan Bikas with you. There is Adrian Fernandez, who comes into Laguna Seca third in the championship, just 6 points behind Jimmy Vasser, but he is sixth on the racetrack, 4 positions behind Vasser, who is the runner-up to Brian Herta. Now rejoining our kart team this weekend, you last saw her at Mid-Ohio. She's a regular on RPM tonight. Here's Marlo Klein with more on Adrian Fernandez.
Well, Alex Zanardi has already clinched this championship, and then there's a huge battle for the top spots for the championship. Only 20 points separates positions 2 through 7. Included in that is Adrian Fernandez, one of the guys who is in this battle, who doesn't have a lot of experience towards the end of the season. The best he's ever finished for the championship is 12th in 95 and 96, and Adrian certainly has his sights on second place for the championship and that $500,000 check.
All right, thank you, Marlo. If you saw our Kart Today show over on ESPN2, you know that Adrian Fernandez has promised his team that if he finishes second in the championship, he's going to take them all down to Cancun, a beautiful resort city on the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Here are the points, exclusive of our newly crowned champion, Alex Zanardi. Jimmy Vasser second, followed by Fernandez, Moore, Franchitti, Andretti, Pruitt. Right now, Michael Andretti runs way back after a first-turn schmozzle here at Laguna Seca, still shown in 27th position. But all the rest of the guys in the battle for the championship are running close to the front. And as they run right now, Greg Moore passes Adrian Fernandez for third in points, so Fernandez has to be careful.
Well, one thing we should also note is since the first lap, other than Robbie Gordon and Paul Tracy, who jumped up, Robbie 8 spots, Paul Tracy 4th, there has not been a pass for a position on the track. Now that shows how competitive this field is and how tightly bunched everybody is running.
The grid was incredibly tight. Let's get down to Gary Gerald.
This business of fuel conservation has always been important if you want to make a 2-stop race at Laguna Seca. We haven't talked about fuel conservation since Elkhart Lake, but already radio scanners up and down pit road, all teams virtually telling their drivers that they must improve on fuel consumption. That's the word that went out about 3 laps ago to Brian Herta. We just checked in with Dario Franchitti. They are being conservative. They are hoping that somehow they can get good enough mileage that they can go 1 more lap than the other front runners, so that Franchitti, who has the first pit at the pit entrance, would have a wide open pit road for exit. So already early pit strategy coming into play here, and it all centers around fuel consumption.
How delicate a measurement is it? Well, by our rough calculations, 0.15 miles per gallon over the course of the 83 laps of the race is worth 2 complete laps around this racetrack, and that can make a difference. Mauricio Gugelmin is in the pits. Gugelmin is out of the car. Jan Bikas has more.
The reason is that the telemetry said that the water temperature was up to 130 degrees Celsius. That's too high, that's overheated, and obviously that is the reason why Gugelmin now has left the cockpit.
I'll tell you what, I know the telemetry, they've got to rely on the telemetry, but when I was driving, even if the telemetry showed something, we just kept going. You couldn't take a chance on the telemetry. They must have seen a lot more problems in that engine than just the water.
Let's take a lap around Laguna Seca with Bobby Rahal as he makes his final laps here as a racing driver.
Look at this shot. He's climbing up the hill to the famous corkscrew, blind braking over there, flattens out. Look at this turn. Nothing, you can't see anything. Drops down, tricky little right-hander, up through the gears. Really fun little left-hander there, very quick. Down here, now this corner's 120 miles an hour, stands on the gas, comes in hard on the braking, the hairpin, 48 miles an hour through here, stands on the gas, tries to put the power down as we go up through the gears. Listen to this. Over the top right here, 180 miles an hour, hard on the brakes, down into second gear, little double apex corner there. Squeeze on the throttle, up through the gear. A little tricky right-hander on the power. It's always slippery there. Out over the curb, up one gear here. Quick right-hander, about 118 miles an hour there. Go up through the gears. Hard on the brakes. Join the old circuit out here. Squeeze out there, cambered corner, and look at this view. You can't tell where you're going. On the brakes, down the gear, a big dip right there, and now the climb back up to the corkscrew. Let's take one more look at this corkscrew. Blind braking, flatten out, down through the gears. Look at this. Whoa, and down. Here we go, down to the hairpin.
Robbie Gordon, that is just ahead of Bobby Rahal, who runs in 16th position right now. We're going to take a break. Earlier we showed you the points to and on back. How valuable are those positions? $1.75 million in championship bonus pool money yet to be handed out. Gugelmin and Leto are out. Everybody else is running strong at Laguna. Welcome back to Laguna Seca Raceway with the cars running in the background, but I am joined by a man who is switching teams next year. P.J. Jones, son of the great Pardelli Jones, will be driving the Vistion car for Pat Patrick Racing next year, and it will not be the Reynard that Scott Pruitt is in out there. A new Swift chassis for you. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I mean, I'm just happier than heck. I mean, this is the best opportunity I've had in the series, and to be with Vistion and Patrick and a lot of good, experienced people on that team. So I think it'll be a good place for me.
You're coming from a Reynard. You had some time perhaps in the Eagle for Dan Gurney's All-American Racers. You were there for 7 years, won championships in sports cars. How heavy is your heart leaving the All-American Racers team?
Well, it's tough. You know, it's kind of like breaking up. You know, it's he gave my career a big shot in the arm, and Dan's been really good to me through the years, and I guess that's why I was there for 7 years. And in Toyota, they're getting it. They're getting better. I just had to make a career decision.
Well, we're still racing. I'm going to throw back to Danny Sullivan. Why don't you come join us in the booth, PJ?
Okay, I'd love to.
Okay, Danny, take it away.
Thanks, Bob, and we're on board with Richie Hearn now. He's coming up the pit straightaway. He'll be climbing up to about 180 over this hill. Drops down, watch him hard on the brakes. Down through the gears. Tricky little left-hander, double apex. Try to squeeze that power on. Richie really enjoys this track, as do all the drivers. Look at him slide that car out of turn 3. He's throwing it around now. You don't want to see that happen. Look at that. Over the curb, throw up a little dust. He is driving that car really hard. The unfortunate part about that, if you do that too long, you'll eat up those tires, and you've got to make sure you get to that first pit stop, which will be around lap 27. So he doesn't want to chew him up too much. Climbing up the hill. Watch, he's coming up here to the corkscrew. That drops off drastically down that hill. Every time that happens, your heart just kind of goes up in your mouth. It is a fantastic corner.
Good job of play-by-play there, partner. Now there is Michel Jourdain Jr., who was black flagged for spraying fluid out the back of the car. The young Mexican driver remains in the car while the crew takes off the side pod covers, the engine cover, and pokes around near the right rear corner of the car.
Anytime you come into the pits and your crew has to take the engine covers off, that is not a good sign.
Back up front now, Brian Herta plunging down the corkscrew. P.J. Jones, let me ask you, are you sorry you missed a chance to go drive a 900 horsepower race car around Laguna Seca today?
Well, I guess when you miss Laguna Seca and not able to drive, and you see all your friends and your team, your old team out there, yeah, it's difficult. This is one of the best tracks in America, and as Danny described the corkscrew, I mean, there is nothing like coming off that. It's like falling off a ledge.
Did you ever get to drive the sports car here? Did you all race here? And you all had beaucoup horsepower in that deal, didn't you?
This place, to me, is downforce and horsepower. We were fortunate here, I think in '92, to come here and break the all-time track record with our GTP car, the Toyota GTP car, and the car was awesome. I mean, it was 4.5 Gs under braking, 3.5 in the corners. The car was just insane.
Well, let me ask you a question, too, right now. Of course, we're watching this unfold. Brian Herta's out there leading. He's still got only a 2.6 second lead has dropped down. You see Jimmy Vasser just in the back of your screen there coming into view. He's closed up about a second, but still, what do you see unfolding right now? What's everybody doing out there in terms of fuel management and tire management?
Well, those are the big two keys here, is the fuel and the tires. This place notoriously gets a lot of marbles out there, and with the tire wars, it's making it tougher and tougher getting the marbles on the outside of the track. It's like if you get offline, it's like being on ice. And the fuel economy here is crucial. Last year, I got about 2 laps from the end and ran out of fuel. That's how crucial it is. They don't give you a whole lot of fuel for the amount of laps you have to do.
Right. Now, for everybody at home, when we're talking about marbles, that means the buildup on the tires and the rubber, and it all gets thrown just off of line. And what happens is it makes it very difficult to pass.
Problem on the racetrack for Dennis Vitolo. There's a small fire at the left rear.
Looks like he's also facing the wrong way on the racetrack.
Yes, he is definitely spun there. Either that or all of the other drivers have turned around and gone the other way, and I don't think that's happening.
That is down by the Firestone walkover bridge on the infield here at Laguna Seca between turns 3 and 4. And it appears that the engine is not running.
You can see the big skid marks, see the marks coming out right up in there where Dennis is obviously spun. That is a very tricky right-hander, and if you get on the throttle too quick, you can just loop it and go around. Also, what happens, BJ was talking about the marbles on the track. As the race gets run, there's more dust being pulled up out on the track, and that mixes. Look here, Brian Herta coming in for a pit stop, and Jimmy Vasser.
Jan Beekes and Gary Gerald await them.
Herta comes in, first stop of the day. It came unexpectedly. Everybody was in that fuel conservation mode. This slightly alters the scheme of things, but only 69 gallons available on this side. Now Herta ruins smoothly. Everything looking good in 11.5 seconds.
And right behind him, Jimmy Vasser gets nervous, and there goes Alex Zanardi. Well, it's been down here in the pits, but I can tell you they added 1 turn of front wing to Vasser's car.
And they head back out on the racetrack. You'll notice that they do not use the long pit lane return road, which veers off to the left right at this point. They dump right back onto the racetrack down in turn 2.
And you see them, they look like they're going so slow there. They're ginger. They're having had the experience of driving Gilles de Ferran's spare car, that when the tires are cold like that, it takes a couple of corners, if not an entire lap, to get them up to optimum operating temperature.
And we thank Derek Walker and the Valvoline Honda team for allowing Danny Sullivan to get back behind the wheel of a champ car. There is Brian Herta. We're under yellow, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Laguna Seca. There's the view from our Honda Helicam. Keep in mind, at the end of our race, Honda will bring you commercial-free coverage of a substantial portion of the closing laps of the race right down to the checkered flag. And our thanks to Honda for that. The top 9 cars came in order. And going back out, Zanardi got past Greg Moore and now runs in 4th position. Christian Fittipaldi lost 3 positions. He's back down to 13th. Let's get down to the pits.
Adrian Fernandez is having some difficulty with the power of his Ford power plant, but because of what's known as a wastegate, which controls the turbo pressure. Now, he can do pretty well when he's out there running under green, but they're very concerned about him getting onto the throttle on restarts. That's where he's really lacking some power. There's a concern, but nothing they can do during the race.
Well, we've got P.J. Jones, of course. He's going to be Adrian's teammate next year. You saw him fiddling there with the little button on the right of the steering wheel. What is that button? They've changed quite a bit.
Right. I'm not exactly sure, but I think he might have been, since Dion was saying he had a wastegate problem, he must be clicking up the boost, trying to get it closer to getting more pressure, manifold pressure.
So that he can settle that boost down and have a normal run.
You saw a lot of vibration in that steering wheel, too. Some of the drivers have said that Laguna Seca is bumpier this year than they remember it being. What were your impressions, not having raced it in about 5 years?
Well, of course, I didn't have that much to compare it to. It was a little bit rough. You see Al Jr. taking advantage of that restart, and Adrian Fernandez. And look right here. We've got Franchitti, and it looks like Zanardi getting around Franchitti also at that restart.
So it is now Herta, Vasser, Zanardi, Franchitti, Moore, Unser Jr., and Fernandez in the top 7 spots.
On the restarts here, I think a lot of things you see is the team set the tire pressures pretty low, and it takes about 2 or 3 laps before you can get the tire pressures to come up, especially after a pit stop, because they need to set the pressure for the long run and not just the short run like you would in qualifying.
Let me ask you about your involvement with Pat Patrick Racing now, PJ. Are you talking with the team? You're helping out with their effort in the pit lane?
Well, I don't know how much help I am, but yeah, definitely just kind of listening in, learning. It's kind of given me a head start for next year.
Look at that right there on the screen. Sorry, Zanardi was taking a look at Jimmy Vasser. Jimmy looked like he made a mistake going into the corkscrew. He got in there a little late and locked up a tire. I saw a puff of smoke. Zanardi's one that will always take advantage of somebody else's mistake. And even though they're teammates, Zanardi wants to get to the front of this pack.
Zanardi has had an interesting weekend here in Laguna Seca. He was forced to sit out first round qualifying on Friday because of a collision he had in the corkscrew with Brian Herta, of all people, after the checkered flag flew on Friday morning during practice. Now keep in mind, Alex Zanardi is still on probation from earlier this year, which may be why his penalty was so steep on Friday. And only the second time a driver has ever been excluded from a session in the Kart FedEx Championship Series.
It appeared to me from a driver's point of view that Jimmy didn't have his tire pressures and temperatures up. He looked like he was a little bit more ginger around the corner. Alex seemed like he brought the temperature of his tires up a lot quicker.
If you look at Franchitti too, same thing. He seems to be a slower starter. You know, it says that maybe they've got the tire pressures or the car set up maybe for a longer run. I think a lot of the teams are a big sigh of relief after that yellow flag. I think they all probably need it for fuel.
Oh, and Bobby Rahal. Bobby Rahal is spun off there, and that's a bad spot because the track drops away on the dirt side of the track. He could be high-sided right there, which means that, look, you can see it. The car is caught. He's got no grip there. Smoke coming out of the engine where it's getting a little hot. Might even be heating up the bodywork there.
It might be because that's very dark smoke, which means something other than fuel is burning.
Right, but all Bobby needs right there, if the engine's dead, all he needs to push him off of that curbing. He can roll down. It's such a steep descent. All they got to do is push him, and he can bump start that and be on his way.
Now, the word we're getting is that Richie Hearn might have been involved with Bobby Rahal there at the top of the corkscrew, and that's a very heavy braking area.
Right, and you saw that red car in the middle of the track slow. Okay, we're on Bobby Rahal's car coming up past one of the MCI cars. Max Pappas, oh, he bounces over the curb on the inside and went out and hit Max Pappas, who's going to be his driver for next year.
No.
What an introduction to team owner.
Oh, that irony is too much.
I guess Max is happy he got that contract signed before they had that little incident.
So the flags wave at the corner as the kart safety team goes to work at the top of the hill, and that shot gives you a good view of just how steep that drop-off is. Now, we mentioned Richie Hearn. Let's take a look from his onboard.
So you can see Rahal going to the inside there, bounces over the curb, boom, taps. We think Richie had to lock him up to avoid hitting Bobby, trying to get it in gear, get out of there. He never saw him drop down and select a lower gear. Look at Bobby holding his hands up like, hey guys, just push me out on the track. I can bump start this.
And that was Michael Andretti who went by Richie Hearn as he started down the hill.
Well, we may have called that was Max Pappas, but it looks like it was probably Robbie Gordon there.
To get confirmation on that, both Pappas and Gordon, the teammates for Archie R. Wells, driving identically painted MCI-sponsored Reynards.
And that's what really throws us, because let's not forget, before the second car that Robbie Gordon was in had more Panasonic on it than MCI, and they switched that over, and it's really made it difficult for us here in the booth.
And now we have confirmation it was Max Pappas that Bobby Rahal got together with up there. Meanwhile, there is Greg Moore, currently shown in 5th position. He's got Dario Franchitti just ahead. Now, Franchitti, with 2 straight wins coming in, has come from outside the top 10 in points all the way up to 5th with a real solid shot at that $500,000 that goes to the championship runner-up.
I'll tell you, the guy that we really have to pay attention to in all this is Al Unser Jr., because Al has not been doing very well on some of these courses, and Roger Penske has managed to launch him up into some of those spots. Al started in 7th, and he's running very strong right now in 6th.
We're going to take a break. Bobby Rahal has gotten restarted. He heads for the pit lane, but he is well back in the field. Brian Herta leads, Bobby's teammate. We'll be back. Here come a pair of teammates. Winners of this race the last 2 years, champions the last 2 years for Target Chip Ganassi Racing. Jimmy Vasser leads Alex Zanardi in their pursuit of Brian Herta. We'll check the interval to the race leader as they flash across the Omega timing stripe right under that walkover bridge. 1.3 seconds, same as it was last time around.
Now, what'll be interesting here is what orders are coming down from Chip Ganassi, because you want Jimmy not to drive with his mirrors and worry about Alex. What you really want him doing is focusing on catching Bryan Herta, and that gap is only 1.3 seconds.
Now I'll let the cat out of the bag. The baseball history we're monitoring here on ESPN is the Arizona Diamondbacks Cincinnati Reds game in Cincinnati, where Andy Benes has a no-hitter going. There is one out right now in the bottom of the ninth. If they get to 2 outs, we will take you to Synergy Field in Cincinnati to witness a little baseball history.
And you can see the gap right there. Of course, we're riding on board in 3rd position. But look, Jimmy Vasser's right in front. And just going out of view on your screen, in front of him is our leader, Bryan Herta. And there's a bunch right behind him, behind Zanardi, which is Franchitti, Moore, and Allenser Jr. We have got a very tight race at the front of this field.
Now Mark Blundell is in the pits, and the cover is off on the Motorola car for the Pac West team.
And that looks about the same scenario they had with Big Mo Gugelmin earlier. Nobody's jumping around, so that's not a good sign from the driver's perspective.
Both cars are Mercedes powered. Let's watch the teammates from Target Chip Ganassi Racing. 3 straight championships. No other team has done that since Penske Racing back in the early 80s with the likes of Rick Mears and Al Unser Sr. They have been absolutely bulletproof. Incredible reliability, always running at the front. This man, Alex Zanardi, with whom you ride, has 17 podium finishes in his last 22 races, including 6 victories.
I think the real credit to Chip Ganassi Racing is the fact that not only has Alex Zanardi been up there at the front, but so has Jimmy Vasser, winning races, winning a championship, finishing right up in the championship. So that means the team is very, very well balanced and gives all the effort to both drivers, not just to one.
Here's a look at the numbers on Jimmy Vasser with over 100 starts in the series. Winner here a year ago. A couple of victories this year. Let's go to Jan Bikas with more on Vasser.
Well, remember we said during the first round of pit stops that it was mayhem down here in Ganassi Racing. They had quick stops. We found out afterwards there's actually a fire at the back of Jimmy Vasser's car, and that is because the fuel nozzle sprung a leak, and there was fuel that was coming out of that, and they have since replaced the fuel nozzle. However, Jimmy Vasser did lose a little bit of fuel.
But he has gained some time on the racetrack. He took 2/10 off of Bryan Herta the last time around. We're working lap number 33, 51 laps to go.
We saw this a little bit before they made that first pit stop. Don't forget, Jimmy was closing up right before they pitted under that yellow situation. So maybe his car is working better as the fuel load lightens.
This, of course, is a Reynard chassis with a Honda engine and Firestone tires. Moments ago, you saw Mark Blundell in the Pac West pits. The timeline for car development and testing has become extended once again. The Pac West team expects the first of the 1999 Reynards to be delivered at the end of October, October 31st, with a second car coming in mid-November. And the other teams will get their new chassis in the course of those weeks. And the testing will begin virtually at the moment the 98 season ends on November 1st at California Speedway.
What is amazing about that, too, the first Reynard is going to be delivered to Pac West before the end of the season.
Helio Castro Neves has spun. Looks like it down in turn 2, the Andretti hairpin. Now, turn 1 is basically just a kink in the road just past the start-finish line. This is 2, a very long left-hander. Now, Andy Benes has lost his no-hitter bid with 1 out in the bottom of the 9th inning in Cincinnati, but Sammy Sosa is coming to back in Chicago. Let's go to WGN coverage.
And you're right, folks, Sammy does have his groove back. He's flying to right, he's walked, he's scored a run. With a 3-run lead, looking for more. The pitch. is through there for a strike. Sosa has hit 49 of his 60 home runs against right-handed pitching.
That man, Mr. Bill Murray, looking on, rooting for 61.
The 0-1. Swung that, built it. There it goes. Number 61, move over Maris.
And Sammy's driven in 147 with his 61st home run. A monstrous shot to straightaway left field. Sammy Sosa is one behind Mark McGwire.
So it's Sammy Sosa, Roger Maris, and Mark McGwire as the only three men hit 61 or more. Unbelievable. Glenn Allen Hill pops it up. It's 0-2 to him.
Welcome back to Laguna Seca, and congratulations to Sammy Sosa on home run number 61, joining Roger Maris. I'll tell you what, Mark McGwire had better not be looking over his shoulder. As Satchel Paige once said, somebody may be gaining on you, and it may be Sammy. Right now, Jimmy Vasser to the left of your screen and his teammate Alex Zanardi continue. Well, they were gaining on Brian Herta, the race leader. They had the gap down to a second, but then they began working traffic.
Well, what's amazing to me is it's not just Brian Herta, Jimmy, Alex, it's Dario Franchitti, Greg Moore, Alan Sir Jr., Fernandez, all right there. This is a classic Laguna Seca type of race. Look at them, all right there, one after another. And Adrian Fernandez just coming into your screen there. He's in 7th spot, just like a second out of there. They're all bunched up. Let me tell you, you cannot make a mistake. And we saw Alex Zanardi looking down the inside of Jimmy Vasser, thinking, should I pass here?
And in regards to that, the radio communication between Chip Ganassi and Alex Zanardi was asked, is Jimmy Vasser slowing you down? The answer from Zanardi, he's slowing me down big time.
Well, we'll see if he can close up on his teammate, get Jimmy Vasser to let him by. The gap, 1.5 seconds. Herta to Vasser, last time by. We'll be back to Laguna Seca.
Welcome back to Laguna Seca. Tony Bettenhausen was Rookie of the Year in 1979. Since then, he's had 2 Rookie of the Years. Stefan Johansson was the Rookie of the Year in 1992. Then, Patrick Carpentier was Rookie of the Year last year. Everyone thought that he certainly has his way with rookies, and so this year's Rookie of the Year candidate will be Helio Castroneves. You saw Helio go off course. He's now currently 22nd, but he is trailing Tony Kanaan, his former Indy Lights teammate, by 25 points for the Rookie of the Year. Tony Kanaan is currently in 10th place. One other note about Bettenhausen and his rookies, he's brought 6 rookies to Laguna Seca over the years. One of them is our very own Jan Vikas.
All right, thank you, Marla Klein. There is Tony Kanaan, having a great run after another great run a week ago in Vancouver, where he might have had a podium, but for a collision with Paul Tracy. There you see the Jim Truman Rookie of the Year award standings. Canan leading his former PPG Dayton Indy Lights teammate, Helio Castro Neves. They are best of friends as well as toughest of competitors. Four times in the 15 previous runnings of the Honda Grand Prix of Monterey featuring the Texaco Haviland 300, one man has led flag to flag. Most recently, Paul Tracy in 1994. Michael Andretti has done it twice in 91 and 92. Back in 1990, our own Danny Sullivan led every lap of the race. There are the teammates from Target Chip Ganassi Racing, second and third, Jimmy Vasser and Alex Zanardi, now 2 full seconds behind that man, race leader Brian Herta, who after losing a lot of his lead gap is now extending it again. Let's get more on him. Jan?
We're checking, Bob, on the fuel economy situation relating to Brian Herta, the race leader. Now, the fact that they came in and made their first stop about 5 laps sooner than expected led many of us to believe that that automatically might mean a 3-stop race. However, we're being told by Ray Lito, who is in communication with Herta on this team, that that's not necessarily so. Now, a little bit of yellow would help them get back where it could still be a 2-stop race. They're not being super conservative with fuel, but they still are having to monitor the situation. And everybody up and down is telling their drivers, including they're telling Brian Herta, think fuel, think fuel. That seems to be a common message. Jan?
Hey, Gary, that is the same situation for Team Target Ganassi for both Vasser and Zanardi. They want to try and get to lap 50, or if they can, to lap 53. They say if you can get to 53, you then can make it to the end of the race with only 2 stops. So possibly only 1 stop remaining for both Vasser and Zanardi.
Well, let's not forget, when they both pitted, there was 61 laps to go. That means they've got to split that up. One time they've got to do 31 laps or 30. That's a long way to go. And look at Alex Zanardi. Looks like he's getting a little impatient with Jimmy, saying, hey, I want to get by and have a go at Brian Herta. Let's not forget, that can actually help Jimmy, because if he gets up there and he starts chasing Brian Herta, Brian's going to have to run a faster pace. Run a faster pace, you use up more fuel.
Right now, Brian Herta is leading from the front. There you see Herta coming down through turns 9 and 10. We are at the halfway mark of the race. There will be 41 laps to go the next time Brian Herta flashes over the start-finish line. Herta has been just dominant this weekend, spending most of the time at the top of the timesheets in both practice and qualifying. Checking the top speeds on Friday evening, he had 5 of the top 6 speeds at the start-finish line, the top 4 at the first trap, and the top 5 speeds in the second trap. He has been absolutely flying.
Now, one of the things that the strategists are trying to figure out here is a yellow situation. We heard that they said we could use a couple of laps under yellow to help get us back on our fuel window. That typically does not happen at Laguna Seca. All these people study when there's a lot of yellows, which tracks. This is one where they do a lot of local yellows, but typically not that many under a full course yellow.
And Danny, a further update in regards to fuel. We talk about saving fuel. Well, many of these owners do coach their drivers, and one would be the Tasman team. And Steve Horn has called his driver, Tony Kanaan, and said, we want you to use more brakes and less engine when you're slowing the car down, because we need to save some more fuel. That's one of the tricks you can use.
From our Honda Helicam, you see Brian Herta entering turn 11. There come the Target teammates. Okay, it's time for the official jinx. Only once in the 15 previous runnings of this race has a driver taken his first career victory in the kart series. That was Gilles de Ferran back in 1995, but he was driving for Jim Hall's team. This could be the day for Brian Herta. Checking time intervals at the line. Quick lap for Zanardi, second quick Franchitti, Tony Kanaan. Third quickest lap. Check the gaps to the race leader. So many times Brian Herta has been running at the front, perhaps the fastest man in the series around a single lap. Still looking for that first win. Right now, he's on schedule. Stay with us. Yesterday here at Laguna Seca, kart drivers and a few former champions, including our own Danny Sullivan, went barefoot and joined famed motorsports artist Randy Owens in creating a masterpiece, a very large masterpiece, which will be featured at Runway Madness, a live auction for charity in Fontana, California at season end. For more information, call the kart headquarters in Detroit, and you might take that number home. Back at the Honda Grand Prix of Monterey, featuring the Texaco Havoline 300, you ride with Michael Andretti, who, after being knocked off at this turn, the Andretti hairpin, early in the race and dropping completely to the back of the field, now runs in 16th. He is back on the lead lap. And last time around, the top 16 cars, including Michael, all lapped within about a half second of each other. That's right. How close it is. It is very close out there, and it just shows that their qualifying times are not a fluke. These guys are running as hard as they can with the fuel that they're allotted. They're running on a qualifying pace, and they have to do it for 185 miles. I think for the viewer at home, you see them sitting in the car, and their hands are right there. Look, it looks very relaxed up there. You can't believe how physical this is. I drove 4 laps the other day, and as you all heard, I was breathing heavy and so forth. You have to be in incredibly good shape to drive one of these cars for 2 hours at this kind of pace. Remember, there's no half times, there's no timeouts, you don't get any flag situations. You've got to be on it the entire time, and it is a very, very physical endeavor. Temperature hovering around 90 degrees. These drivers all wearing multi-layer fire retardant suits, boots, gloves, balaclava over their faces, the helmet. It is very hard work. Check out ESPN2 for RPM tonight, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 Pacific tonight, for all the news of a big day in racing. I won't give away any of the results that have taken place thus far. Watch RPM tonight to get them. It must be a little liberating for a guy like Michael Andretti. You started with a race plan in mind. You get punted off the racetrack. You go to the back. Suddenly, you've got nothing. Just go for it. Drive the car as hard as you can for as long as you can, I would think. Well, you do, but at this particular track, I think everybody's driving that way. And I know all the racing I did against Michael Andretti, he's got that attitude anyway. He just goes for it. And you've really, as competitive as the field is, and I know we keep repeating that, you've got to have that attitude the entire time. You have got to go for it every lap, all the time, if you're going to come away with a good result. Race leader Brian Herta has crossed the stripe. 36 laps remain. Let's check on strategy now with Jan Bikas.
Well, the first thing we checked into is when are we going to see the top guys on pit road. As far as the Ford power plants, we're going to see Scott Pruitt here on lap 50, Adrian Fernandez on 51. Right next door for Vasser and Zanardi, they're hoping to go up to as late as lap 53. Of course, that's Honda power. A lot of people feel 50-51 is going to be too early to make it all the way to the end.
Jan, and let me tell you something, a lap or two short around here is really tough. And if you make a pit stop late, you lose about, by the time you come in, get your fuel, and get back out, even a splash, you lose about 35 seconds around this place, which is about a half a lap. It's too much ground to give up for an additional pit stop if you want to have a good result.
Earlier today on our Kart Today program on ESPN2, Brian Herta said, well, we're kind of out of the points, so we're just going to go and try to get that first ever win. He is 9th in points officially coming into this weekend, 13 points behind his teammate and car owner Bobby Rahal in 8th place. So a victory here would do wonders for Brian Herta, knocking them a couple of places up the ladder, and there is still 3 races to go after this. We'll be in Houston, Texas for a brand new street circuit in a couple of weeks, then Surfers Paradise, Australia, and then the big finale at California Speedway in Fontana, $1 million to win.
And let's not forget, Brian Herta has gotten 2 points this weekend, 1 for pole position. He's led the most laps so far, which nobody can overtake him because we've gone over half distance in the race. So he's going to pick up that point for most laps led. If he could win, that gives him 20 more. That's 22. That's a clean sweep. Maximum points. Let me tell you, give me 3 weekends like that, and we'll see who ends up where in the championship.
That's right. He's only 11 points behind Bobby Rahal right now. There's the look back from Jimmy Vasser to Alex Zanardi, who is secure in his championship. Pit stops are coming. We'll be back live in a moment to Laguna Seca. A week ago in Vancouver was the key weekend of the season to date in the FedEx Championship Series. Key for many drivers. For Dario Franchitti, a race win and a $440,000 payday. For Alex Zanardi, his second straight PPG Cup and $1 million in bonuses. Here at the Honda Grand Prix of Monterey, featuring the Texaco Haviland 300, we expect pit stops. We have cars in the pit lane right now. The first of the Target teammates, Alex Zanardi, is in, and Jan Bikas is there.
It turns out it's Jimmy Vasser. Alex Zanardi is going to stay on the racetrack, and he's going to pick up position. Remember that Vasser had a fuel leak. Maybe that's why he's here a little bit early. 12.5 as Michael's on his way in. Now, they tried something tricky here. They put out a pit sign for Zanardi 2 laps ago that said pit, and they were looking to see if any other team would bite and come in then early. It didn't work. Zanardi will be in next time by.
Well, Jan, I'd have to say it worked somewhat. It certainly fooled the television team.
And now this throws something interesting here, because Jimmy's driving a Honda. Normally gets very good fuel consumption. What is their strategy right now by him being the first one in the door? Can they go those 32 laps that remain and on this tank of fuel? Is he going just so he's got position here? This is going to be critical. These pit stops are going to tell everything.
The race leader is in, and here comes Alex Zanardi, the second place car as well. A critical pit stop.
Pressure now swings to the Ray Hall team for Brian Herta. They serviced Herta in 11.5 seconds the first time around. Trying to get every precious drop of fuel that they possibly can. Revs are up, waiting, and rolling.
And here comes Alex Zanardi, 13.2. He cannot keep up with Herta, at least on pit road.
Brian Herta was first out, 60-mile-an-hour pit lane speed limit. Now he comes back up on the revs. Dario Franchitti assumes the race lead as Herta and Zanardi come back on the racetrack. Herta shown in the 5th spot, Zanardi 6th.
This is going to be incredible. We're seeing so many different strategies right here on when everybody's stopping. Look at Franchitti. He's still out on the track. The longer he goes, the richer he's going to be able to run his car, meaning using more fuel, the more horsepower it's going to make, the faster he's going to be late in the race.
And that's what won Vancouver for him as he was trying to run down Michael Andretti in the late laps. Franchitti had more fuel and could run harder. He heads for the pit lane.
And also what happens right now, he has a clean pit lane there. He can do this, he can get out without too much traffic.
That was partly by design, Danny. They wanted that clean pit lane. They wanted the extra fuel mileage. Wing changes, both sides. Everything looking routine. Now the fueling complete. Just under 14 seconds.
And look at this. He's going out, but there's one of the players' cars right in front of him. I think that's Carpentier. Held him up a little bit. Look at this. He's having trouble.
Here comes Brian Herta sweeping by to move back into the race lead as Franchitti comes up to speed. Alex Zanardi will get by as well.
And where is Jimmy Vasser in all of this? We'll have to wait and see as it all unfolds and everybody takes their position on the track.
Right now, Tony Kanaan is shown in 4th place after a quick pit stop by the Tasman group. Jimmy Vasser shown in 5th, and then Greg Moore, Alonso Jr., Gilles de Ferran, Adrian Fernandez, and Scott Pruitt.
Now Jimmy's back there in 5th, you see, taking a look around the outside for Tony Kanaan. But if he is on that long fuel strategy, he's going to have to be a little conservative here and turn it back down and not run with as much power.
Climbing the hill. Beautiful view of Salinas County off to the right, but no time to enjoy the scenery here for these drivers. Ooh, all kinds of tire smoke from Kanaan. Kanaan pitted back on lap 53. Vasser working the throttle. Slowest corner here, turn 11. And a very difficult rumble strip on either side. Very tall bumps in that strip. They head through that slight left-handed bend. That's turn 1, and this is turn 2, the Andretti hairpin. "29 laps remain. 28 next time by for for race leader Brian Herta. We'll take a break now that pit stops are done and return. Stay with us. Back at Laguna Seca, the Honda Grand Prix of Monterey featuring the Texaco Haviland 300. You see the running order on the left. Bob Varsha along with Danny Sullivan, Jan Beekes, and Gary Gerald. Glad to have you with us on a glorious weekend here on the Monterey Peninsula. Now let's talk about fuel strategy. Gary.
Well, it's going to be really close as far as Brian Herta is concerned. They're already telling him to short shift. Once he established that he came out through the round of pit stops as the leader, they immediately went into that conservation mode once again. So he can dictate somewhat the pace as the leader, but it's going to be very close. He's got to go 31 laps on this final tank of fuel to make it, whereas Tony Kanaan got 2 extra laps in the adjacent pit, a wide open racetrack as most all the leaders came in. He cranked out a couple of the fastest laps of the race. That helped him improve in position. And of course, he's not right there with the front runners. Jan?
And Gary, a very similar story. Spoke with Tom Anderson. He said that Jimmy Vasser, of course, he makes the call for Jimmy. He thinks they're in trouble because they came in a lap earlier. He thinks that both Zanardi and Herta are looking good, but he said in particular Franchitti and Kanaan, like you said, with one more lap, are looking great.
Well, what we're seeing out here on the track is a team strategy. Look at this. Rahal moves to the inside. Is he going to block Zanardi? No. I think he wanted to, but he let Brian Herta go by. Didn't want to screw him up there, but I thought he might have tried to hold up Zanardi and see if he could give his teammate some advantage.
Back end steps out slightly for Brian Herta as he gets on the power as soon as possible. Where have we seen this before? Alex Zanardi coming up behind Brian Herta at Laguna Seca. Now, Zanardi is also going to be pretty marginal on fuel, as is Brian Herta, Greg Moore, Al Unser Jr., Christian Fittipaldi, and Richie Hearn. As our pit report has mentioned, Dario Franchitti, Tony Kanaan, Patrick Carpentier are probably in pretty good shape. The guys who are in trouble, Gilles de Ferran, Scott Pruitt, Max Pappas, and Alex Barron, who pitted on lap 50. On lap 51, Jimmy Vasser, Adrian Fernandez, Paul Tracy, and Michael Andretti came in for service.
Now what becomes so difficult for Brian Herta right here is if his team is telling him short shift and save fuel, and he sees Alex Zanardi behind him at Laguna Seca with all that's been made of the pass and everything that's going on. He gets so frustrated in there because it's like, I just want to race and show what I can do, and now I've got to conserve fuel with Alex Zanardi right behind me.
That's right, the two-time PPG Cup champion looming up behind.
A driver can make so much out of saving fuel just the way that you drive. Now the upshifts, you're seeing the guy just pull the lever there. Electronically, it slows the engine down just enough to pull the shift. Otherwise, he never takes his foot off the throttle. But on the downshift, if he doesn't rev the engine going down, you save a little bit more fuel. You roll into the corner a bit, use the brakes a little bit more. You save those little ounces of fuel, and it can make all the difference at the end of this race.
Earlier this year, we talked about Alex Zanardi's huge points lead. We wondered whether his confidence and his aggression would continue after he clinched the championship. We're getting evidence today. He's lost nothing. Stay with us.
Back here in Laguna Seca, currently Alex Zanardi is running in second place just behind Brian Herta. And this has been a whirlwind week for Alex Zanardi since clinching his second straight championship. Just after the race in Vancouver last Sunday, he hopped on a plane and missed the birth of his first child by 8 hours. He spent 3 days in Italy, and when his son was just barely 3 days old, he returned to the United States so he could run here at Laguna Seca this weekend. But just after this race today, he will head back to Italy for a couple of weeks to spend some extended time with his wife Daniela and his new son Nicolo. Back to you, Bob.
All right, thank you very much, Marlo. But Alex also says he will see out his career in the FedEx Championship Series, if that's what it comes to. He is still being coy about whether or not he is headed for Formula One next year. I think everyone up and down the pit lane assumes that it will be the case. We will bid goodbye to the two-time champion this year. Now let's go down to Jan Beekes with more on Zanardi.
Well, he's been talking on the radio with Chip Ganassi, and Chip says, Alex, I need you to save fuel. It says 10-4. And I also need you to stay right behind Brian Herta. He calls back and says, so I'm supposed to save fuel and I'm supposed to push Brian? Chip says, yes. He says, okay.
Well, Well, he seems to be doing exactly what Chip's asking of him. He's staying right there. He got a little bit closer a minute ago, but he's under a second. He's 0.7 of a second behind him. So let me tell you, Brian Herta, I'm watching him drive. He's not backing off at all. He's sliding it out of the corkscrew. This is tough on Brian as well.
That was Alex Zanardi's engineer, Morris Nunn, and the team owner, Chip Ganassi, watching from the pit wall. There is Al Unser Jr., currently in 8th place. A week ago in Vancouver, Michael Andretti was leading the race, and the pit told him, conserve fuel, but keep Franchitti behind you. And he said, how do I do that, over the radio?
And Brian Herta, guys, is saying, I need to fuel. And they're telling him, we've got to find 1 gallon before these final 25 laps are complete. So it's that close. A gallon of fuel could make all the difference in the world. That's what Herta needs. Consequently, they're having him go down 1 click on the boost, we are told.
And Gary, it turns out it's a similar situation for Zanardi. They said, you're not saving enough fuel. You must save more. So if we see Brian Herta turn down the fuel, it looks like Zanardi will do the same.
Yes, but who's going to turn it down first? Is it going to be Zanardi, or is it going to be Brian Herta?
There is Vincenzo Saspiri in one of Dan Gurney's All-American Racers Eagles chassis. He is in for P.J. Jones, with whom we spoke earlier in the day. He'll run this race and the remaining 3 in the season. A front row starter in the Indianapolis 500, coming off 5 consecutive victories, driving a Ferrari in the International Sports Car Racing Series in Europe. And Vincenzo Saspiri is getting a birth of fire here in the Kart FedEx Championship Series this weekend as you watch Brian Herta and Alex Zanardi.
And Alex has closed up about a 10th on that. That's going to seesaw back and forth. A little bit closer there. Brian maybe have turned down his fuel a little earlier. Let me tell you, from a race driver's point of view, those are the worst words that can come over the radio, particularly when you're leading or chasing that guy for the lead. It's like, slow down, save fuel, save fuel. You feel so frustrated that you can't do what you want to do.
Alex Zanardi could set so many records this year. His current margin in the PPG Cup Championship is 92 points. The record margin of victory in the title chase is 47 by Al Unser Jr. back in 1994. The most points in a single season, Michael Andretti in 1991, 234 points in 17 races. Right now, Alex Zanardi has 218. This team has been so strong. Consider that in the last 48 races, Target Chip Ganassi Racing has come away without scoring points from either of its drivers just once.
And that is the kind of team that you want to drive for. And as we said before, what has been so good with Target Chip Ganassi Racing is that they spread it across the board. Both drivers get equal share in everything and equal treatment.
Franchitti with a star of the future. Tony Kanaan of Brazil just behind him in 4th place. And Kanaan beginning to look racy with the 3rd place runner. He could get that podium today, and he goes underneath. Welcome back to Laguna Seca. You see Tony Kanaan currently running in the number 3 spot after getting around Dario Franchitti. Here's how it happened.
He comes in under braking. Dario's got it. Look, he just got in there too late. Locked up a left rear. Ran off wide. Couldn't do anything about it. He saved the position. Did not spin it. Back on there.
Now Jimmy Vasser is closing on Dario Franchitti, who appears to have a handling problem because while we were in commercial break, he had a bit of a lurid slide off turn 11 as he tried to accelerate. And now Vasser is closing in.
That could be that he just got his tires dirty when he ran out there wide, got on the grit. That oftentimes takes a lap or so to clean him up. He ran a 1-minute 14-second lap, which was about 3 seconds slower than the leaders, but he's back down to a 1:12 lap right now, so I think he's got a handle on it.
17 laps remaining. Let's get an update now on the situation for the front runners, beginning with Gary Gerald.
And in Brian Herta land, I tell you, the tension is getting so thick down here, Bob, you can almost cut it. Ray Lito, Scott Rumke, the rest of the crew, talking constantly, checking numbers on the computers, going back, talking some more, trying to find out what it's going to take. Ray Lito completing a conversation. Ray, can you tell us anything on how tight it's going to be on fuel for you?
Well, it's really close, Gary. I mean, I think you see that Alex and Brian are kind of both back their pace off a bit.
Right. How much fuel do you need to find?
Well, we're under a gallon what we need to find. So Brian's working really hard. You know, we still got 20 laps left here to find it. So I think he can do it.
This harkens back to like Rio de Janeiro when we had a great fuel race down there.
I was just talking about that with Bob's engineer. But we want to make up for that this time.
All right, we'll wait and see what it's like. That's what's going on right now at the Herta camp. They need less than a gallon. Jan?
Well, let's talk to Chip Ganassi. We know you've been trying to save fuel. Is Alex saving enough fuel?
I'll tell you, we're trying to save fuel. We're as close as we've ever been.
And you can see that obviously every lap that he goes by, he wants to see exactly what the fuel counter says. How is that last lap? Are you going to make it?
Last lap he did was perfect on the mileage.
Car off the racetrack.
Okay,
Vincenzo Saspiri is off the racetrack in the gravel trap. Could it bring out a yellow flag? I believe that's down in the Andretti hairpin, turn 2.
And he's buried in there pretty deep. Look at how the back end of the car is in there. We're going to go full course yellow. This will really help them save that gallon of fuel. They instantly will turn down their fuel mixture into conservation mode. And tell me how frustrating that is when you're a Shell-sponsored car and you don't have enough fuel.
Joe Montana, co-owner with Chip Ganassi of his team, sits with engineer Morris Nunn on the headset to Alex Zanardi. Let's go to Jan Bikas.
Well, as far as who we might see on pit road, we will see the Patrick cars of both Adrian Fernandez and Scott Pruitt, because remember, they came in earlier, but you saw the reaction of Chip Ganassi. This is exactly what they wanted. It's the same thing that they wanted also for Brian Herta.
Welcome back to Laguna Seca. There's the running order on the left of your screen as we remain under a yellow flag, a full course caution. Earlier, Gary Gerald spoke with Ray Lito and Brian Herta's team about the fuel and the Rio 400 2 years ago. That was when Bobby Rahal was dominating the race, but ran out of fuel with just 2 laps to go, and Paul Tracy came through to take the victory. Could that be in store for Bobby's teammate and protege, Brian Herta? We'll find out when we come back. Thanks to Honda, we will be commercial-free to the checkered flag. Welcome back to Laguna Seca and the Honda Grand Prix of Monterey featuring the Texaco Havoline 300. Thanks to Honda, we will be commercial-free to the checkered flag. But we must remind you, Sammy Sosa up in Chicago has already hit number 61 on the season. And if he comes to bat again, we will go to WGN in Chicago to see what Sammy can do against the Milwaukee Brewers. Now let's go to Jan Bikas in the pit lane.
Well, obviously, when you run under yellow, it saves you fuel. How much? When these guys run behind the pace car, they use 3 times as less fuel as if they're under green. So I asked Chip Ganassi, okay, if you get 2 laps of yellow, can you run at 100%? He says, all I'm going to say, if we get 2 laps of yellow, we're going to have one heck of a race on our hands. Gary?
Well, it's interesting because I posed the exact same questions in that sequence to Ray Lito, and he said, 2 laps will get us home. I said, can you run 100% with 2? And he kind of looked at me and grinned and said, we need more than 2 to be able to go 100%.
They also serve who only stand and wait. They also race. The guys in the pit lane who work so hard to put these incredible machines together and then let the drivers take them to the track.
And you saw Brian Herta and everybody weaving back and forth. What they're trying to do is they've been driving around, clean those tires up, get all the debris off of it, any excess rubber, and try to get a little temperature back in it, because when they come off of that hairpin, coming onto the pit straightaway, they want to stand on the gas, have clean tires, and be able to race from that point forward.
Seems like every time we come to Laguna Seca lately, it is Zanardi and Herta. Last year they started on the front row and made contact down in turn 2. Let's go back to 1996 and what is simply known as TP, the pass.
You see him coming up the hill, blind spot. Brian goes inside. Zanardi said, I can't believe it. Oh, Brian turns in. Zanardi runs over the curb, bounces out there, right in front of Brian Herta. Brian tries to come back, but I think he was emotionally probably devastated with that pass that close to his first win.
And as you can tell, folks here in Laguna Seca are very proud of that moment. Just one of so many in the history of this track. Now there is Greg Moore, who has parked from 6th place. It appears his race is run. In the car still, however, talking with the crew.
You see how those hot tires just picks up all that sand and dirt.
The field filtering down.
And everybody just trying to conserve as much fuel as they possibly can. They've got it leaned down as much as possible. They try to keep the RPMs as low as possible to not use any more fuel.
There will be 12 laps to go next time by, but right now, Sammy is coming to bat at Wrigley Field. Let's rejoin WGN.
There's no second takes on this one.
I know.
Perfectly the first time.
How cool is this? I got Sammy Sosa coming up, about to hit a 62nd.
Well, the 61st was a monstrous shot.
He nailed one.
And now he gets a chance to lead it off. The Cubs looking for a few more runs with a 3-run lead. And you get to join us in the booth. And how about the view from up here? Can it be better?
I'll tell you what, these are pretty sweet seats you have up here. Last time I was here, oh my gosh. John, look at people out there. Oh my God. This is so big time.
Well, here's the last one. There was no doubt about this one. Look how far Chris this baby went. Past the yellow house.
Went down the street.
Went down Kenmore.
That's what I thought.
He missed the building, went down the street.
You see Sammy after he hit it, he kind of like was shaking his fist. He was so excited.
Well, he's sitting on 61 now.
This is so cool.
And he's got a new combatant against whom to do it.
Could you have a more perfect setting for a 62nd?
Here's Sammy. It's high, ball one. David Weathers, the man opposing him. The line, the 1-0. Swing, what a cut he had. 1-1.
Weathers comes into this one, 6-5, 5.12 ERA. On for the 41st time.
He's sitting on 61, the 1-1. Check swing. It was up in the zone, and he's down 1-2 now.
Weathers has only given up 5 home runs this year in 103 2/3, but with the wind blowing out, Sammy doesn't have to get it all. He just has to get a piece of it.
Yeah, flick of the wrists. The 1-2. It slides outside, 2-2. Everybody in the ballpark either standing or on the edge of their seat. And Sammy Sosa back to work. The 2-2. Swung on. He stayed alive. Man, this has been unbelievable.
Pretty good pitch to foul off. That was a hard slider low and away, and Sammy was able to stay alive. Everybody in the ballpark on their feet.
Weathers ready again. Sammy digging in. The 2-2. He missed with it. Full count.
No way Tom Hellion was ringing him up on that one. It was close, but not that close.
Here we go, Sammy.
3 balls, 2 strikes. Here it is. Got him swinging. 1 down. He came into the wheelhouse, and Sammy missed it. 1 away.
We're back at Laguna Seca. We hope you're enjoying our coverage of Sammy Sosa making baseball history while the race continues here at Laguna Seca, still under yellow flag with the PPG safety car out there in the hands of Kellyanne LaFollette from Portland, Oregon. And there is the reason that the yellow flag has been extended. Alex Barron in the Eagle chassis from Dan Gurney's All-American Racers has had heavy contact with the concrete underneath the bridge between turns 5 and 6.
And I cannot imagine what happened to have that massive of a shunt on when you're cruising around conserving fuel. Look at everybody trying to get out there. They've got a lot of work in front of them to get those tires back into position because they can't start without that. Brian Herta has got to be breathing a sigh of relief because he's going to get enough fuel, as is Alex Nardi. What this is going to do, though, is allow everybody to turn their fuel up. We are going to have a shootout that is going to be unbelievable because everybody's going to have enough fuel to go the distance. They're going to strut their stuff now, and we're going to see a fabulous race to the checkered flag.
It is high noon here at Laguna Seca, and we are going to have a shootout. You're right, Danny. A big impact, some strange looking strips of rubber on the track as though perhaps a throttle stuck or something for Alex Barron as the kart safety crews continue to work around the racetrack.
Well, we've got a break here. You know, the guy that's been so impressive here that we haven't shown except from the start is Michael Andretti, who was a lap down He's come back having made that early pit stop, and he's running in 10th position, having clawed his way back up through the field. He's got to be very pleased with that drive, and I'm sure he's going to try to make the most of it on this restart, although his teammate, Christian Fittipaldi, is in position 9, so he's got to deal with that at the restart.
Let's go down to Jan Beekes.
Well, talking about the restart, there is one major concern for the leaders. It's known as pickup. And that means when you drive behind a pace car at slow speeds, the rubber that's already on the racetrack picks up on the tires. Both Zanardi and Herta have called into their crews and said, I'm very concerned about pickup. The car doesn't have grip. What does that mean? These guys now have fuel. They're going to stand on it. They're going to get down to the first turn, and that car is going to slip and slide all over the place. We'll really find out and separate the men from the boys.
Alex Zanardi getting on the throttle there, trying to spin off some of that pickup.
And let's not forget, he spun before the restart at Vancouver, trying to get heat in his tires.
Up ahead, Brian Herta follows the safety car. Now let's take you back to Friday up in the corkscrew when Alex Zanardi and Brian Herta made contact. This was after the checkered flag in the session. Contact not once but twice. Broken left front for Herta. Zanardi's car was okay, but series officials stood him down from first round qualifying for a situation they felt he could have avoided. There is Alex Barron's Eagle forlornly making the trip back to the paddock on the back of the hook.
And what they hate is when the drivers have to follow the pace car offline, because that's where all the rubber and the buildup will come onto your tires. They don't like that. Luckily, the safety truck pulled off to the right off that corner. Now what happens is, as you save fuel too, now everybody can kind of spin their tires a little bit, be a little bit more aggressive, because they have enough fuel. Before they couldn't do that because they were trying to save fuel. That was more critical. Now they've got it. You'll hear them revving up those engines, spinning the tires a little bit, trying to get some heat back in them so that when they come around, they can really have a go. You see why everybody backs off from the pace car there? They try to carry some speed through the corners, those fast corners, to get heat in the tire and clean up those tires.
The last corner will be the slowest one on the racetrack. Turn 11 here at Laguna Seca Raceway. And that will bring everybody off fairly slowly. Let's get down to Gary Gerald in the pit lane.
Ray Lito, we talked to you a while ago. Now, the fuel concerns, I understand, for everybody have been erased. So is that right now? It's going to be just flat out the distance.
Yeah, fortunately for us and Brian, it's out of the fuel hands. It's a race now, which I think we all wanted to see. We're going to go full bore, let him and Alex have at it out there.
Now, we know the history, and obviously, are you feeling pressure? Do you think your driver's feeling any pressure because of what's happened in the past?
I don't think so. I think we feel pressure every week to do well every week, and I don't think it has to do with anything in the past. I think it's just because we want to win today.
This team wants to break through so bad. I'm sure you can just taste it.
Yeah, it's right there. I mean, every week we're closer and closer. We qualify up front. You know, then something happens to us, you know, during the race, and we'd just like to get one in the books here for the team.
Well, it's going to be exciting. We know that. Wish you well.
Yeah, thanks, Gary.
100% fuel concerns are gone. It's just going to be flat to the wall racing these final laps when they get the green.
And they are on very scuffed tires. There will be 8 laps to go next time by, and it may be an advantage to Brian Herta that he has been the fastest guy all weekend here at Laguna Seca, and he never needed that speed any more than he needs it right now.
That's true, and the sight in his mirrors is the one he doesn't want to see. Anybody else back there, but they did make a very good point. It doesn't matter. The pressure is always there. You still got to win it. It's now in Brian's hands. It's out of the sort of fuel god's hands and into his, and we're going to see fabulous racing all the way to the checkered flag.
It's been another weekend of celebration for the Rahal team here this weekend, as Bobby Rahal was honored by the American Racing Press Association with their Jim Chapman Lifetime Achievement Award. The only other driver ever to receive it, Mario Andretti.
Now let's not forget one thing. The closer they go to the checkered flag, meaning the more laps they do under yellow, puts a lot more pressure under the drivers because they have fewer opportunities to pass. So they're going to maybe have to take chances that they wouldn't normally do if they had another 3 or 4 laps.
Now here's why we have not yet gone green. The jet dryer is out there trying to blow some of the marbles off to give the drivers room to race.
Blowing those marbles that are offline there so that they have a clean path, another lane to dive under somebody and take a chance. They're trying to make the best racing possible right here at these last laps.
Bob, I had the opportunity to have an in-depth interview with Alex Zanardi, and one of the questions that I asked him was, what is his relationship like with Bryan Herta? And he hesitated for a moment. He said, you know, he's really not my best friend, but I have to say one thing about Bryan Herta. I really think he's an extremely talented driver, and I think that he is only one step away from greatness. The thing we're going to find out shortly is today going to be that one step.
Of course, what Alex Zanardi was talking about was a race win. Coming up today on ESPN, following our coverage here at Laguna Seca, final round of the PGA Tour Bell Canadian Classic Open from the Glen Abbey Golf Club in Oakville, Ontario, Canada. So be sure to stand by for that. Golf action coming your way on ESPN after today's race here at Laguna. The order is Bryan Herta, Alex Zanardi, Tony Kanaan, Dario Franchitti, Jimmy Vasser, Al Unser Jr., the top 6.
And I don't know about you, but I've really got the butterflies right now. The adrenaline is going through these guys, unbelievable. But can you imagine the tension in the pits as well? You can just feel the tension right here. Everybody knows what's coming. This should be fabulous. And let's not forget Tony Kanaan, a rookie, is lying right there in 3rd spot. He has been very quick.
And Danny, I just talked to Steve Horn and said, how do you play it with your driver? And I heard him tell Tony on the radio, Tony, let's just sit here now and see how it unfolds. No specifics. He says, my guy's done such a great job today. Our fuel strategy is now out the window. We lost the advantage we had there. Now we'll just watch and see what those 2 guys in front of us do.
And thanks to Honda, we are commercial free during all this time. The running up to the checkered flag, off the corner they come, on the gas goes Bryan Herta, Alex Zanardi, and the rest, with Tony Kanaan in that podium position. So many stories about to unfold with 7 laps remaining at Laguna.
And Bryan made a very clever move coming down to the hairpin. He kind of pulled it away a little bit from Alex, so he didn't give him an opportunity on that first corner. But look here.
Carpentier, Pruitt, and DeFerrin on the left of your screen. 3 cars off in turn 2.
Oh, will they go full course yellow now, or will that be a local? With that many cars off and a safety truck out there, it is going to be a tough call.
And the yellow flags come out. And the teams will get on the radios to the drivers saying, yellow, slow down.
From a driver's point of view, this is so tough emotionally because you've just got pumped up, ready to go. You went out there, all the adrenaline's going, you made a great start, and now you're going to have to do it all over again.
There was the collision, and it was a big one. DeFerrin and Pruitt running together in 13th and 14th. Patrick Carpentier was 12th at the green flag. And now they climb from their broken race cars.
And Carpentier, who had a tough week last week and made a mistake trying to pass Jimmy Vasser, he was an unfortunate recipient of that collision between Pruitt and Gilles DeFerrin.
Well, now we have a further extended yellow flag. And we're going to take this opportunity for a commercial break. You ride with Alex Zanardi. We'll be back. You won't miss a thing as the laps continue to trickle away here at Laguna Seca. Welcome back to Laguna Seca Raceway in beautiful Monterey, California. Bob Varsha, Danny Sullivan with you. There is Gilles DeFerrin in the foreground, Scott Pruitt, and Patrick Carpentier. No, that is Vincenzo Saspiri, who dropped out earlier. He's been learning the ways of the Kart FedEx Championship Series, posing for pictures with fans all the way around the racetrack in his long walk back.
And he probably didn't know the way back, but when he saw these guys start taking off, he jumped on and said, I'm going to follow them because they obviously know where they're going.
That's right. Which way to the paddock? There is Pruitt's car, which will be occupied by P.J. Jones next year, and it will be a Swift chassis rather than the current Reynard. There's Patrick Carpentier jogging back to catch up with his colleagues as his car is lifted out of the sand trap in the Andretti hairpin. We now have 5 laps remaining in the Honda Grand Prix of Monterey. There is Bobby Rahal, who once won this race 4 consecutive years, matching Al Unser Jr. for the greatest number of consecutive race wins at a single venue. Little Al's, of course, came at the Grand Prix of Long Beach.
And Brian Herta, who had made such a great restart there, is now going to have to do it all over again.
ESPN coverage of the NFL continues with Sunday NFL Countdown, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific, part of ESPN's season-long coverage of the NFL. Join us every Sunday for all the inside scoop on NFL play for the weekend. Through turn 11, with the PPG safety car out ahead of them, driven by Kellyanne LaFollette this weekend from Portland, Oregon. For 15 years, a school teacher, as well as a driver with many, many sports car racing wins under her belt. And they're going to haul Gilles de Ferran's car out of the way as well. I thought they might leave it out there since it wasn't particularly in harm's way.
Well, it is, because if you see the angle they're coming down there, if somebody had a throttle stick open or hit another car, don't forget he got all the way there. You could have another car get over there and carry a little bit more speed and run into him. That is not a very fun or safe situation.
That's true, and after all, that is your race car out there, so I can see where you might feel protective about it. Let's get down to the pit lane and one very interested spectator.
Well, talk about a 2-minute drill. Joe Montana, what call do you play right now?
You know, Brian's been running well, but the guy behind him has been running well too. So I think it's going to be a great finish. When looking at it the way it's been, you know, I got to go with our guy, of course. You know, he doesn't have a lot to prove now. He's already won it, but he's not that kind of a driver, which I'm sure everyone will soon see.
Well, he's not that kind of driver, and I know Joe's not that kind of quarterback.
Of our 28 starters, 15 cars remain in the running, led by that man, Brian Herta, the man in the target car, Alex Zanardi, and Tony Kanaan. What a day for the Brazilian rookie after the heartbreak a week ago in Vancouver, where he was in position for a possible podium, but before he got knocked out of the race in a collision with Paul Tracy. Today, 1 week later, could be his chance.
Let's also remember, we talked at the top of the show about second in the points, second in the championship, $500,000 at stake. Jimmy Vasser at the moment in 5th position. His closest rival for that second point position, who's only 6 points behind at the moment, is in 7th spot, Adrian Fernandez.
Urgent call went out from Scott Rumpke, who's been on the radio with Brian Herta here in his pits to one of the kart officials. Apparently Herta radioing as they went up the hill by the start-finish line is that little kink there at what's known as turn 1. A lot of dirt on the inside line, and they wanted the officials to address that. From our vantage point, we can't tell if anything was done there or not. It's just another one of those things to keep an eye on as we expect to go green on the next lap. Jan?
Well, Gary, I can tell you from a driver's perspective, what you try and do is you try and find something on the racetrack that might need to be cleaned up. If you're Brian Herta, you're just trying as hard as you possibly can to see if this race might finish under yellow. And certainly there is dirt there, but obviously when you're leading, you're hoping you get a bit more yellow.
Well, right there at the screen, you can see right there on the curb, right there is the dirt that Brian Herta is talking about. And also, he's very nervous, and I've been in this position before. You're looking for anything. He'd love this race to end under yellow, so he doesn't have to beat Zanardi in a wheel-to-wheel battle. But unfortunately, I think the officials are saying, hey, the track's clean enough. You can drive around that little bit of dirt. Let's go.
It has come down to this. The beginning of the day, about 185 miles of racing. Right now, there will be about 4.5 miles separating Brian Herta from a possible first career victory. There is his wife sitting in the stands along the pit lane. What could be going through her mind right now?
Brian there trying to get the heat in his tires. Now, he took a little bit of a jump coming through turn 9 and pulled a little bit on Zanardi this time. I don't think Zanardi's going to see that same deal this time. I think he's going to stay a little bit closer to Brian.
Once more, at full course caution speed, up at the top of the corkscrew. Alex Zanardi being bounced around in the cockpit as he nudges the throttle, trying to clean those tires. Chip Ganassi looking on. 3 straight championships from Jimmy Vasser and Alex Zanardi. and 2 consecutive wins here.
And look at Zanardi right there. He's going to stay with him. Brian tried to snooker him a little bit and get a jump. We're going to see a green flag, a white flag, and a checkered flag.
We've still got turn 11 right here to go, and now they will be on the gas hard, facing the green flag with 2 laps remaining at Laguna.
Brian Herbert is getting around that dirt. Zanardi right there. He's going to stick with him as tight as he can. Brian's going to need a couple of qualifying laps right here just to pull away.
We'll monitor the time of those laps as they click off.
What Brian needs to do right here is just focus on driving as fast as he can. Try not to pay as much attention as he can to Zanardi and just look ahead and focus on that every now and again in the spots where he can be passed. Take a glance in his mirror.
Light on fuel on scuffed tires. Coming to see the pass in 1996. Zanardi looks down the inside.
Look at Brian, says, hey, you're not going to do that again. You did it 2 years ago. No way, Jose.
The crowd is on its feet. There are big screens all around the racetrack. They're watching the same pictures you are of this battle between 2 of the great open-wheel stars in all the world. Brian Herta trying to hold off 2-time PPG Cup champion Alex Zanardi. They face the white flag this time by.
Brian Herta's stretching it out a little bit here.
A 1:13.3 to a 1:13.6. Herta over Zanardi.
Now what he's got to pay attention here, do not make a mistake, and in those spots where I can possibly get past, I am not going to leave that door open for Alex Zanardi.
It has been such a tough year for Brian Herta. He has been to the brink of this first victory so many times.
And on the radio to Herta, the instruction, don't look back.
He's pulling away a little bit. Gary, he's doing everything right here. He's making all the right moves. He's putting in great laps. He's got a little bit of a gap. Sorry, Bob.
Top of the hill, Zanardi drops back slightly. Is he planning something? Or does he just have nothing up his sleeve for Brian Herta?
They've got one critical out-braking spot right down here. Brian has got to make sure he keeps that door closed for Alex Zanardi.
Here it
goes to the inside.
Turn 11.
Alex, he counters him perfect.
Zanardi on the power off the corner. Squirming under acceleration to try to catch Brian Herta, but he will not be able to. First career win for Brian Herta, and well-earned. Congratulations to the entire Team Rahal and the shell car for Brian Herta. Debbie Rahal hugs around for the crew. Brian Herta has done it. We're out of time here at Laguna Seca. First career win for Brian Herta. First win as a car owner for Bobby Rahal since 1992. I'm Bob Varsha for Danny Sullivan, Gary Gerald, and Jan Vigas. Thanks for being with us so long from Laguna Seca, where Brian Herta has won. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader